What's going on, Not Move Nation? Welcome to the Not Move podcast. Today is November 24th at 10:35 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm here with JB Sport Talk, and we are going to break down the Monday night football game tonight between the Carolina Panthers and the San Francisco 49ers. I'd like to say thank you to the supporters, subscribers, and followers. We really appreciate you guys. Also, a special thank you to our sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and Dubby Energy Drinks. All right, so tonight we have the Carolina Panthers at San Francisco 49ers. Carolina leads the all-time series 13-10 against San Francisco. Brock Purdy technically has a 1-0 career record against Carolina, but all he did in that game was have one carry for one -1 rushing yard and 0 pass attempts. Bryce Young, quarterback for Carolina, has never played against San Francisco. What's going on? Blessed up, P. Let's go. This is Christian McCaffrey's first game playing against his former team. He's currently the running back for the San Francisco 49ers, going up against the Carolina Panthers, who traded him back in 2022. Let's see. Bryce Young, I had to do a little bit of research on where he was from. He was born in Pennsylvania, but moved to Pasadena, California when he was a kid, and considers it his hometown. So that's about 6 hours away from San Francisco. Anyways, San Francisco is favored by 7.5 points. The over-under is 49.5. Last that I checked, Carolina carries a 6-5 record into this matchup, and they're coming off of an overtime victory against Atlanta at Atlanta, 30-27, and then San Francisco carries a 7-4 record. Coming off a 41-22 win at Arizona. I didn't see any weather issues for this game, and I'm going to check to see right now if we have any major offensive injuries. Everything looks pretty clear for the most part in regards to the injuries. So, overall, I'd give San Francisco a decent-sized passing advantage in this game. Brock Purdy is that projected starting quarterback tonight for San Francisco. I give San Francisco a pretty good-sized passing advantage in this one. Carolina, a big rushing advantage, which is surprising, considering San Francisco has Christian McCaffrey. But they really haven't been accumulating a lot of yards per game with their rushing attack. Carolina has. So I give Carolina a big rushing advantage. San Francisco, I give them a big third down conversion advantage, a slight red zone attempts per game advantage, a slight red zone conversion rate advantage. I don't really see a clear sacks on the quarterback advantage. Neither of these teams are really good at getting after the opposing quarterbacks. And then I give Carolina a slight turnover differential advantage. What are your first initial thoughts on this game, JB? What do you think about, Brock Purdy being in there tonight instead of who have they had in there? Mac Jones.
Mac Jones, Mac 10. I've been saying, I think initially Carolina wins. Not only that, but going over on the 49ers quarterback side, right? I think you keep the hot hand going, right? Personally. I know Brock Purdy got paid all that money and they would, somebody could possibly be on the hot seat, but and I don't know necessarily I don't know, man. I think they're just continuity. It might be time though to switch. I don't know. I've been an advocate though for riding that hot hand and having that continuity, especially it being like week what 12.
Mm-hmm.
Like dude hasn't played since week 2, I think. So yeah,
Let's see. Purdy, I'm seeing played last game. He started last game against Arizona. And then Mac Jones started the previous 6 games. Mac Jones has started 8, looks like 8 total games this season.
Yeah. They put Brock back in, took him out, brought him in, took him out.
Yeah, that's got to mess with the chemistry, you would think, you know?
And that's what I've been saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you on that. Let's see here. You know, I mentioned that Carolina leads the all-time series 13-10 against San Francisco. Now, San Francisco, in the games that they have won, they've won 7 out of their 10 games, all-time games against Carolina by 8+ points. For those that are considering San Francisco minus that 7.5 tonight. And then San Francisco has won 3 out of 4 games at San Francisco, which this game is being played at San Francisco. They've won 3 out of 4 games at San Francisco against Carolina by 8+ points. So more times than not, when San Francisco is winning, regardless, 7 out of 10 all time against Carolina by 8+ points, and then 3 out of 4 in San Francisco by 8+ points. There you have it. Now, against the spread trends are a little different. Carolina is 7-4 against the spread this season. San Francisco 6-5 against the spread. However, Carolina is 3-2 against the spread as a road underdog, and San Francisco is 0-2 against the spread as a home favorites. With that being said, the over-under is 49.5. 4 out of the last 10 games that these teams have played had a combined score of 50+ points. So more times than not, it's gone under that in the last 10 games. And then 5 out of 11 all-time games between these two teams in San Francisco has had a combined score of 50+ points. So more times than not, when these two teams play at San Francisco, it's gone under 50 total points between these teams. Now, Carolina is 6-5 to the over this season. San Francisco 7-3-1 to the over, which is the best in the NFL. Carolina 3-2 to the over as an away underdog. San Francisco 1-1 to the over as a home favorite. So those current trends this year are suggesting this game goes over, but the historical statistics are tell a different story there. And we'll talk about those projections and what we think here as the show progresses, whether we think, who we like on the spread, and do we think this is going to go over or under that 49.5 total points. Before we get into player props, I mean, this is somewhat of a player prop that I'm going to be talking about, but it's more of a team prop here. I had to look into the defensive touchdown situation here. I know there are some people that sometimes like to play those anytime defensive touchdowns. I think we had one last night in that Rams game, right? So,
Yep.
So I looked up how many times there was a defensive touchdown in the 23 games that these two teams have played throughout history. There has been a total of 9 defensive touchdowns in 23 all-time games between these two teams. San Francisco scored 2 defensive touchdowns in a game once. San Francisco's had 4 defensive touchdowns all time against Carolina. Carolina's had 5 total defensive touchdowns against San Francisco. And the first touchdown ever scored between these two teams was a pick 6 by Carolina. So I thought that was a pretty interesting little
Great.
statistic there. Now this season, Carolina does have a pick 6, but but they don't have a fumble 6, and San Francisco's defense doesn't have a pick 6 or a fumble 6. But I thought I'd give you guys that little information there. Anyways, Ivan says he's got Hubbard for 15 rushing yards. Oh, he's coming in and throwing all of his props that he likes in with us. So let's look into those a little bit here. Hubbard, San Francisco before the week started wasn't terrible nor great at defending rushing yards allowed to running backs. They were somewhere in the middle. They were, around average. Uh, what I'll say about San Francisco's all-around rushing defense is they ranked 12th best at the beginning of the season, or at the beginning of, excuse me, at the beginning of the week. San Francisco ranked 12th best in the NFL in rushing yards allowed per game. Chuba Hubbard over under 14 and a half rushing yards. He's gone over that line in 8 out of 9 games this season, Ivan. He's gone over that line in one straight game. He's had 14 plus. If you could take the hook off that 14 and a half, he's had 14 plus rushing yards in all 9 games this season. He's played one career game against San Francisco, but didn't have any carries or targets. So I don't even know if he actually played in that game. JB, what are you thinking about Chuba Hubbard tonight? I didn't. That was weird. Hold up. I did notice that, Hubbard was getting a lot more carries at the beginning of the season than he is now, and he's only been getting about 5 carries. Let me check real quick before I ask you what you think about Chuba Hubbard, JB. He's had 4 rushing attempts in his most recent game, 3 and then 5. So Rico Dowdle's really eating into, his rush attempts, but that line is pretty low. Do you think Chuba Hubbard has 15 plus rushing yards tonight, JB? Any thought on that? Or what do you think about Rico Dowdle? I think you're muted.
Better? Work?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. I think Chuba gets it. Going against the Arizona defense, or not the Arizona defense. I'm so sorry.
San Fran.
San Fran. I think they got it going against San Fran. Rico though, man. Rico's been kind of going off, ain't he? Like Rico's been kind of like that man right now. Like, um, I like Rico. I do like Bryce Young too. Um, I I think it's gonna be a good rushing game for the Panthers. I think they're gonna eat. Um, I think it's gonna be a good production day on the ground, whether it's Bryce Young rushing, combination of Rico or oh boy, you know.
Right on, man. Yeah, Rico Dowdle, last that I checked, his over-under was 76 and a half rushing yards. He's gone over that in 4 out of 11 games this season. He's gone under that in 2 straight games. So Rico Dowdle has had 60-plus rushing yards in the exact same amount of games that he's gone over that 76 and a half rushing yard line. 4 out of 11 games this season. He's had 50-plus rushing yards in 6 out of 11 games this season. He's had 45-plus rushing yards in 7 out of 11 games this season. He's had 130-plus rushing yards in 3 out of 11 games this season. Now, Hubbard did not play against Miami on October 5th or against Dallas on October 12th. Dowdle had 206 rushing yards in one of those games and 183 rushing yards in another one of those games. So it really seems like Dowdle's been having those monstrous games when Hubbard was out. Hubbard's in tonight. And Rico Dowdle's played 2 career games against San Francisco and only had 11 and 15 rushing yards. Didn't score a touchdown in either one of those games. So if I were to have to pick between the two, between Hubbard and Dowdle here, I would pick Hubbard. And I would like to take that hook off to give me 100% success rate this season. Hubbard, 14-plus rushing yards in 9 out of 9 games this season. That would be the most ideal spot. And then I think if I were to have to choose Dowdle, I would at least lower that to 50 plus rushing yards. He's had 50 plus rushing yards in 6 out of 11 games this season, 45 out of 7 and 11. So somewhere between that 45 and 50 range. And then I see that um, Ivan was talking about Bryce Young rushing yards. Last that I checked, I saw it at over under 7.5. He's only gone over that line in 4 out of 10 games this season. He's gone under that in 2 straight games. I would feel more comfortable getting that at 5 plus rushing yards. He's gone over that in 6 out of 10 games this season. He's never played against San Francisco. And when I was looking at Bryce Young's rushing statistics when it comes to the turf versus grass splits, home versus away splits, I didn't really see anything that was too telling. 1 year he would have more yards per carry on at home. The next year he'd have more yards per carry on the road. So I think it just somewhat depends. But much like San Francisco's rushing yards allowed to the running back position before the week started, I mentioned that they were about average at defending against that. Same thing with the quarterback rushing yards. They were about average before the week started at defending against that. So and if I had to take anybody over their true line, it'd be Chuba Hubbard over the 14.5 rushing yards. And then, I would probably lean towards Bryce Young, Ivan, and then Rico Dowdle on those rushing yards. But let's see what other props that you have that you mentioned here. Bryce Young for 206.5 passing yards. I mean, Bryce Young last week, JB, against Atlanta last week when Carolina was going into that game, Atlanta allowed the fewest passing yards to opposing teams. And Bryce Young threw for 448 yards. And Ivan was on top of that. He liked Bryce Young over the passing yards, and I was a little concerned about that. But he went way over, and Ivan likes him here again today against San Francisco, who ranks 28th in passing yards allowed per game before the week started. What do you think about Bryce Young today getting some passing yards, JB?
I like Bryce Young. I've definitely have made hot takes that in 2 years Bryce Young be better than Jalen Hurts, right? I think it's possible. Bryce Young is a pro. I like it. I agree with Blessed Up. Let's go. Ride that Bryce Young train.
So, Carolina, it's a weird situation because Carolina is better at accumulating rushing yards on the ground than they are through the air. And there's a pretty big difference there. But San Francisco is weaker against the pass than they are the run. So I think San Francisco's defense matches up somewhat well today against Carolina. So I think Bryce Young's has to be that X factor for Carolina. Carolina does call a higher percentage of rushing plays that relative to the other teams in the league. They rank 21st in passing play percentage. But yeah, Bryce Young, he's only gone over the 206.5 passing yards in 2 out of 10 games this season. He did go over last game, as I mentioned. He's had 190 plus passing yards in 4 out of 10 games this season. He's had 150 plus passing yards in 6 out of 10 games this season. He's never played against San Francisco. He's had more passing yards per attempt on turf. This game is being played on grass. He's had more passing yards per attempt on turf than grass in all 3 seasons that he's played in, which is a bad trend. And then he has more passing yards per attempt when his team wins or ties rather than loses in all 3 career seasons. So I think that Bryce Young does have a better chance of going over those passing yards tonight if the Carolina Panthers win this game. So I think now is a good time to kind of, maybe make our predictions for the game. I mean, do you think Carolina wins this game, JB, or do you like San Francisco in this one?
I do. I like Carolina. I like them a lot. Um, I don't know if it'll be like them taking off. It might be a battle, but I think I see Carolina coming out on top at the end of the game. Um, maybe it's due from him, being behind and having to play catch up, but um I think he goes in there and has a good game.
Yeah, I would have to lean towards Carolina covering that spread plus 7.5. I think Carolina to win is very doable, but I think it's also a little ambitious to take an 7.5 point underdog to win outright. I'm thinking San Francisco wins this game by 4 points, but so with these statistics, Ivan, I am going to go against. I'm gonna say Bryce Young goes under those passing yards. But I think he's going up against a great pass defense to accumulate those passing yards against. And San Francisco doesn't have a good pass defense. So, but I can't go with something where Bryce Young's only gone over that line in 2 out of 10 games this season. If I were to take Bryce Young's passing yards, I'd have to at least get it down to probably 150. But and then these trends, the fact that he has more passing yards per attempt on turf than grass, I'm concerned about. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, I mentioned this yesterday. That doesn't necessarily mean that he has less passing yards in games where he plays on turf than grass. But if you had that would require me to do a little bit more math. But I didn't have the time to do that math this morning or
Sure, I blessed
yesterday.
up.
But yeah, typically, I would think that if a player has more passing yards per attempt on turf than grass, and they probably accumulate more passing yards as well on turf than grass, but not always the case. But hey, I was wrong last week about Bryce Young. Ivan or Blessed Up P, you called that out. So I mean, he called every. I do want to let everybody know that you called Bryce Young to have a good game last week, and here you are again calling for it again. Blessed up
And
P.
I mean, it is on track record, right? It was on the show. So it's recorded. Y'all don't believe it.
Yeah. Xavier Leggett over 23 and a half receiving yards. Leggett, last that I checked, Ivan, I had it at 24 and a half. Now, San Francisco has allowed the third most receiving yards to wide receivers this season before the week started. They allowed the second most receptions to wide receivers before the week started. Leggett over under 24 and a half receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 3 out of 9 games this season. He's gone over that line in one straight game. He's had 20 plus receiving yards in 4 out of 9 games this season. He's had 15 plus receiving yards in 6 out of 9 games this season. He's had 10 plus receiving yards in 7 out of 9 games this season. He's never played against San Francisco, and he has more yards per catch when his team wins or ties rather than loses in both seasons that he's played in. So I think, yeah, anything's possible on any given Sunday, in this case, Monday. But I do see a bigger likelihood of him going over those receiving yards if his team wins, much like Bryce Young's passing yards. I think if the Panthers win, there's a better chance of Leggett going over the receiving yards and Bryce Young going over the passing yards. If they lose, I have to lean towards the under on that. And then he says Christian McCaffrey, 40 yards receiving. Let's go check out McCaffrey's receiving line. Carolina was about average at defending against receiving yards allowed to running backs before the week started. They ranked fourth worst in receptions allowed to running backs. Last that I checked, McCaffrey over under 44 and a half receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 9 out of 11 games this season. He went under that in one straight game. He's had 40 plus receiving yards, Ivan, in 9 out of 9 games this season, all 9 games. And then he's gone over that line the 44.5 receiving line in 2 out of 3 games that he's played with Brock Purdy in this season. He's played a lot of games with Mac Jones. So I had to look at the information on what he's been getting receiving with Brock Purdy. And he's had 40 yards receiving, 73 and 92. He's never played against Carolina. So, and we'll get into his rushing prop here in a minute, but I'm leaning, I'm liking his receiving prop a little bit more here. JB, what are you thinking about McCaffrey tonight? Do you think that he just balls out and goes crazy against Carolina, his former team?
What did he do last week?
Christian McCaffrey, let me pull it up. Christian McCaffrey last week played at Arizona, had 81 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 receptions, 40 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. So he scored 3 touchdowns last week.
So let me ask you, is that below average, or above average Christian McCaffrey?
Above average, I would say.
Okay. So you would say that was a good week then?
Yeah.
Okay. So then this week, let's probably look at, I think he's been hitting every other week this year.
It looks like it. Yeah.
That's what I think the trend is. So I'm gonna, man, and it's kind of tough because it is his former team, but it's not like that this is a get back game, right? Because I mean he's been in San Fran for so long. I'm pretty sure they've already faced already. So that's water on the bridge, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't see him going off. Just because of that simple fact of I'm gonna go with the trend. I'm gonna go with the grain. And I'm gonna say that he does not go off this game. He has a average or below average game. That's also like how they've been doing. Like that's how the 49ers have actually been winning too. Or yeah, that's how they've been winning. Is when McCaffrey has a good game, they win, and it's kind of been almost an every other week thing ish.
The past 4 weeks, yeah, you're right. He's did good
So
last week. The week before, not so good. Did good the
yeah.
week before that. Week before that, not so good.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ride that, and I'm gonna go with that. And no, he doesn't. I'd stay away from him this week. Kind of
Here's
ran
the
him
thing.
out.
Here's the thing about McCaffrey. Even in these bad weeks, he's still getting, as I mentioned, 40 plus receiving yards in every game this season. So I'm not necessarily saying that he's going to get a touchdown tonight or not get a touchdown,
Well,
or the rushing yards. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I think receiving yards, I think he's going to get 40 plus receiving yards just based on the data that I'm looking at. Or do you think he gets that, or just unsure about it?
I mean, I don't know. I'll go ahead. I'll agree with you on that.
But he doesn't really have a monster game, maybe on the ground, or score a bunch of touchdowns or something, right?
Yeah, because like so the other thing was his bigger games have come along when Mac Jones has been at quarterback as well. You know, so there hasn't been I don't know, his weapons have also been down as well. You know, I think they're just kind of all sort of getting healthy as a team. Um, and
Now,
coming together.
Now, Ivan is saying that he's thinking about Christian McCaffrey for longest reception. I don't know exactly what that number is, Ivan, but what I'll say is that the Panthers have allowed, before the week started, they allowed the 4th most 40-plus yard receptions this season and the 5th most 20-plus yard receptions this season. I'm looking on ESPN.com here. I'm looking at McCaffrey's receiving game log, and I'm looking at his longest catches. And if I'm reading this correctly, his average is – no, that can't be right. But anyways, Ivan, he's had a 25 yard receiving gain, a 20, a 29, 23, 27, 39. So just kind of depends on what that number is. But I think you're looking in the right direction there. Simply because Carolina, once again, they've allowed the fourth most 40-plus yard receptions and the fifth most 20-plus yard receptions before the week started. And Carolina, they're pretty much ranked the same in regards to passing yards allowed per game and rushing yards allowed per game. So just in that regard, they're not extremely vulnerable. Now, Carolina, I do want to just mention that they ranked 26 before the week started in opponent yards per completion. And Christian McCaffrey ranked 95th in the NFL in yards per catch. So opponent yards per completion and yards per catch is a little bit different than what we just talked about with the 40-plus yard receptions and stuff. You could look into, yards after the catch, all sorts of stuff. So, but those little statistics, I feel like, make a big difference. And then let's see here, Bryce Young. Yeah, we've talked about him a little bit. Catching up with your notes here, he blessed up. He says he loves the under 49.5. If it's still at that line, that's what I'm thinking too, man. That's why you were saying or blessed up the. Yeah. Or I'm thinking, I think McCaffrey not only could get over those 44.5 receiving yards tonight or 40 plus, but also even have the longest a longest reception too. Did you say the longest reception or?
There's also been a lot of stuff going on in the NFL, right? Like you'll see, and I'm not saying like necessarily like does it mean something kind of like sketches going on, but the players, especially on primetime games that we're expecting to go off, aren't really going off.
Yeah,
it's a lot of no-namers, so that's why I'm also saying no. And I also think like there's a trend and a reason. It's not because he can't go off every week. I think that Christian McCaffrey definitely can go off every week. I think the reason that he's going off every other week is because the team is holding him back. Because if we not remember that he has a
injury history.
Well, not even just that, but he has the deal with his Achilles, his arthritis in his Achilles or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? So that probably has a deal with them holding him back on certain situations, like protecting himself, protecting him from it. So I think there's more of a reason. And I know, like, I've been seeing a lot of parlays and stuff, and especially with Southgate picking the no brainers, right? I mean, obviously, like, yeah, Derrick Henry's going to get in. And then get down to the goal line and they don't put Derrick Henry in. They take him out the game. They get within the 20. Or Jahmyr Gibbs, they take him out. They put in Montgomery. They weren't doing that weeks 1 through 8, weeks 1 through 7. But now all of a sudden, a lot of teams have been transferring into this different type of thing. That's why I'm saying, like, I have a couple of reasons why I'm staying away from McCaffrey this game.
Yeah.
So,
I'm looking at red zone rush attempts right now inside the 20-yard line for San Francisco. McCaffrey's had 74.5% of the rush attempts inside the 20 this season. And then, Brian Robinson has 11.8%. So he's ranked second on San Francisco. Brian Robinson does. And I noticed, we'll get into the anytime touchdowns here in just a minute, but I noticed that Brian Robinson did score a touchdown in his only career game against Carolina. So, maybe with the game script that you're going with, they get down in that red zone and give it off to Brian Robinson. Now, it's nice that we have one career game history to go off of with Brian Robinson. We know that he's capable of getting into the end zone against Carolina. Not saying that Christian McCaffrey isn't, but we don't have any history against Carolina with Christian McCaffrey. So you're making me kind of think about maybe Brian Robinson getting into the end zone here today, because
That's yeah.
I'm with you with the primetime games, especially. It seems like sometimes these guys that we're expecting to get in do not. It seems like a lot of these primetime games, to go along with this comment here.
Let's go
I don't
with
know
this.
I don't know the statistics
Buffalo.
on it, but I think a
Buffalo.
lot of the games have been going under on primetime this year. At least it feels that way.
And go with the Buffalo game. Trainer, James Cook, 2 tutties on it. Yeah, he's gonna get it. Get down the goal line. What do? They turn around and they either take him out or they quarter QB sneak it with Allen.
Hmm.
Like a lot of these, they did it last year with Saquon and Hurts. Hurts ended up getting 11 touchdowns at the goal line. So and a lot more teams are doing this. Are doing the QB sneak or the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it. Um, so there's I have a couple of reasons, man. Trends are changing in the NFL. It's not the same black and blue or black and white that it used to be. This year there's been a big wrinkle in the game. A lot more teams are going for it on fourth, even in their own territory, earlier on in the game. Crazy.
I'm just trying to find out. Yeah, for sure, man. I'm just trying to find out where Carolina has been allowing touchdowns a lot this season relative to other positions and other teams in the league. And it seems like where Carolina has been most vulnerable is rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks, running backs, and receiving touchdowns to tight ends. But we'll talk about Kittle here in a second. He has not had a touchdown in 3 career games against Carolina. So that's why I'm a little iffy about George Kittle tonight for an anytime touchdown at least. Let me just go see real quick. San Francisco red zone targets. Christian McCaffrey, not only is he that main red zone rushing threat for San Francisco when he's in the red zone, but he's also the main target. And he's right there with Jake Ferguson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. 18 total targets in the red zone for Christian McCaffrey in this season. And then it's Juwan Jennings. And then it's George Kittle. Really, I think those numbers could be a little bit skewed, though. I would maybe, if you guys have time, you guys have plenty of time throughout the day to do your anytime touchdown research and whatnot, listen to some other people. But something that I would do is look at the 3 games that Brock Purdy's played in this season and see who he has targeted in the red zone, because he may be a little bit more favorable to George Kittle than Juwan Jennings. I'm not quite sure. I didn't have the time to do that research, but I absolutely think that could be valuable information, and it shouldn't take too terribly long. You'd have to go through each game
Probably use Kittle
and look
as
to
a
see
blanket.
when they're inside the 20-yard line who is Brock Purdy throwing the ball to. Let's see. Blessed up, he says Bryce is going to go over his passing yards. I love his attempts also, even though he hasn't gone over 33 and a half, only 4 times. But if you look at his attempts versus 49ers, he's given up lately to quarterbacks and passing yards. Let's go check out how many passing attempts the 49ers are allowing to quarterbacks. Yeah, they've allowed the 7th most passing attempts to quarterbacks this season. Also, San Francisco, there could be some teams that maybe have played an extra game than San Francisco has out of the teams that have allowed more passing attempts. So, yeah, overall, they're below average there. And then, Bryce Young, game log here. JB, I'm going to look up something about Bryce Young real quick. What are you thinking about? And then I'll talk about maybe that for a second. Some George Kittle or whatever. What are you thinking about George Kittle? Who are you thinking is going to be the standout guy for the San Francisco receiving corps? Just What are your thoughts on that? Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings,
Phew.
George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey.
I don't think it'll be Jennings, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe because I kind of think like Jennings kind of shows up in like primetime games, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the only time he really shows up. Uh, man, I know this. I think the Niners just said they're not extending Brandon Ayuk, or they're not going to give him his guaranteed or something like that. So there's some rows over there. Um, Ricky Pearsall, the up and rising guy. He'll probably be that go to guy. Him and Kittle. Um, Other than that, I think it's just them two for real. And maybe and I mean you can't take away CMC. So I mean it's one of them three realistically.
I think that's a pretty good look there too, Ivan. The over pass attempts for Bryce Young. I'm not going to do all of the math, but he's gone over the 34 and a half passing attempts in 3 games this season. 3 out of how many has he played? 11 or 3 out of, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 3 out of 10 games this season. He's had 35 plus pass attempts. And I got good news for you. If you're thinking about doing that, or if you've already done it, the 3 games that he did do that in were all on the road. So he's going to be on the road tonight. And yeah, if he's trailing in this game, I think like you're saying right here, it's a perfect spot for him because he may be trailing in this game. Yeah, I think that's worth consideration, man. Sometimes the numbers can look really, really good, and we shouldn't be touching it. And sometimes the numbers don't look so good, and it's a good spot like this, I feel like. So he says Panthers have been winning on the road lately. What do I think about Ted McMillan? Yeah, I mean, so it's tough for me. This. You're usually tuning into the shows when you can. It's not often that you don't, but it's tougher for me to pick player props with rookies because I don't have any career history to go. I have very little information to work with. But I think he's in a good spot here. San Francisco has allowed the 3rd most receiving yards to wide receivers this season, the 2nd most receptions. Ted McMillan, over 66 and a half receiving yards. He's gone over that in 5 out of 11 games this season. He's gone over that in his last game. He's had 60-plus receiving yards in 7 out of 11 games this season. He's had 50-plus in the same amount that he's had 60-plus. So I don't think there's any value in taking him at 50-plus instead of 60-plus because he's hit that at the same rate this season. And then he's had 45-plus receiving yards in 9 out of 11 games this season. Target share. I'm pretty sure he probably leads the Panthers in target share. And yeah, he does by a long shot. Leads the Panthers by a long shot. So it really just comes back to, do you think the Panthers are going to win or lose? What did we say about Bryce Young's passing yards? He has more passing yards per attempt when his team wins or ties rather than loses. So if he's having more passing yards per attempt, who's getting those receiving yards? I think Ted McMillan's being that top guy has got to be in the topic of conversation here. Now I'm just a little scared about it because he's a rookie and I don't know if Carolina necessarily wins this game. But you and JB, it seemed like you guys think Carolina's got a real good chance and kind of convincing me, that maybe they do. I don't think it's a terrible play. Win or lose, I don't think it's a terrible play. We're projecting Bryce Young has to throw the ball in this game. San Francisco bad against defending against those wide receiver receiving yards and receptions. You know, I think the safest play out of any McMillan prop is going to be the 3+ receptions. His true line's at 5.5 last that I checked, but he's had 3+ receptions in all 11 games this season. And then if we're talking about receiving yards, the 45+, 9 out of 11 games this season. I don't feel like taking that line down to 45+ is good enough, though. I don't think the payoff would be good enough at only going over that 9 out of 11 games this season. I think I'd rather stick with the 60+ receiving yards for Ted McMillan. He's gone over that in 7 out of 11 games this season to keep the odds decent, you know. So it's tough, man. It's tough. And I'm also trying to look at a game script where Carolina is ahead in this game and San Francisco's trailing and playing catch up, you know. In that case, I think excuse me. In that case, I think probably Rico Dowdle would have to have a good game, but I don't necessarily see that happening. Yes, it's possible. If Hubbard was out, then I would think, okay. Believe it or not, if Hubbard's out, I'm actually thinking Rico Dowdle has a better chance to have a great game. And maybe, Carolina runs the ball a lot of the game. And then in that case, I'd be a little bit more worried about the receiving prop here for Ted McMillan. But I'd have to lean towards him doing pretty good tonight, Ivan, in regards to the receiving yards and receptions. Now, taking over his true line, I mean, yeah, that's a little tricky. That's really the case with any player prop, I feel like, you know. We saw Kelsey yesterday. I think his receiving line was 53.5, and he's gone over. There was some trend where he'd gone over that in the last 6 games or something, and he ended up just coming up barely short on it. So, yeah, these player props, I think, taking this line down here wouldn't be the worst idea. Once again, 60+ for Ted, 3+ receptions. And then, San Francisco, let's talk about maybe a potential touchdown catch here for Ted McMillan. San Francisco, about middle of the pack. Looks like they haven't been great at preventing wide receivers from scoring touchdowns in this year. And I want to see who that main red zone target is for Carolina. I'm sure it is Ted, and he's right up there. McMillan right up there with Leggett. Who would I pick to score a touchdown out of those two guys? JB, do you have any idea on that? Like, if you were to go with, Ted McMillan or Leggett or even Jalen Coker, maybe even the tight end Sanders, like, who would you go for? Or maybe Dowdle or somebody. Who would you go with for a receiving touchdown for Carolina? My first look, I think, has got to be Ted McMillan.
Receiving.
Man, maybe even Sanders, man, because San Francisco's allowed the second most receiving touchdowns.
Sanders has 0 touchdowns. Sanders has 0 touchdowns.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So does
you're right.
Tremaine.
But you know what's crazy about Sanders? I'm glad you brought that up. But what's crazy about Sanders is he has 8 red zone targets, and Leggett has 11, McMillan has 14. So he's not far behind those guys.
Well, Leggett he's got 11 targets, right? He's got 3 tutties. McMillan's got 4 tutties. I don't know what they've been targeted at, but I know Leggett has 24 receptions, and McMillan has 54. So McMillan's really the number one guy. I mean, getting those, at least he's getting the number one targets.
It sounds like Leggette's been doing maybe a little bit more with less.
Um,
Not too
well,
much less though. They're about
he's got
even.
he's got
What do you know about these
24.
cornerbacks? What do you know about these cornerbacks from San Francisco? And if you don't know, that's fine. Maybe somebody else does that you guys can go watch. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about, you know, like
Uh,
players on defense in general. I don't pay attention. I don't have time to pay attention to a whole lot of that. But does San Francisco have a lockdown cornerback?
Man, I'm looking. They've got 3
Does anybody
interceptions
in
on the
chat know?
year. They got 3 interceptions on the year. Um, Defense. Let's see. Where's their DBs?
Because that's the thing, man, is if San Francisco does have a solid cornerback that can lock McMillan down,
Finn,
then I'd be looking for Leggett.
Mustafa, Finn. Um, no, they don't have. They ain't got Ward no more. They don't have anybody that I know, man. That whole it looks like that whole team is just like turned over almost.
I mean, their pass defense is bad too.
Yeah, maybe Bryce
So
Young takes advantage of it. I mean,
that's what I would look up, guys, just to see. And you guys might know if San Francisco does have a really good cornerback or not that could lock McMillan down. But that's going to be my first look is McMillan, and that's just if. And I'm going to go off the basis that San Francisco doesn't have an absolute lockdown cornerback.
how,
That'd be my first look
how
for an
long?
anytime touchdown, and then Leggett.
How long's Christian McCaffrey been a Niner? Since like 21, 22, 22, 22. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's 2022. He was traded.
Yeah, actually, so yeah, he has
And Brock Purdy really hasn't.
he's already my bad. He already played
You're good.
Carolina. That was his like one of his first games, his get back games. It was October 8th, I'm pretty sure. 2022 though. I think it was like one of the first games they played versus them, or maybe they played that game right before. No, no, yep, no, he was still Carolina. Yep. So it must have been like right after he got traded. That's crazy.
And I'm just trying to
This might
gauge
be his
like
get back game.
I'm trying to just gauge like San Francisco, how their defense is against rushing touchdowns to running backs, receiving touchdowns to running backs, and if Dowdle or Hubbard are capable of catching some receiving touchdowns. Dowdle's only had one this season receiving touchdown. Bryce Young has only had one rushing touchdown this season, and Chuba Hubbard has had 2 receiving touchdowns this season. Looks like San Francisco has been somewhat vulnerable to receiving touchdowns to running backs. Yeah, my first look's got to be Big Millen for anytime touchdown for Carolina, and then Leggett, and then I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say Hubbard. And then Sanders would be up there, the tight end for Carolina. But you mentioned that he doesn't have a touchdown this year, and that's concerning, man. But yeah, give me McMillan from my favorite anytime for Carolina. And we'll talk about San Francisco here in just a second for an anytime touchdown if we haven't already. I know there's there's a lot of players we haven't talked about yet. Saw a thing that said Carolina is the most profitable team in the NFL so far this season, says Blessed Up P. What about Brock Purdy for 2 passing touchdowns and over his rushing yards? Yeah, let's talk about Purdy's passing yards. So I've noticed that Purdy has had 2+ passing touchdowns in all 3 games that he's played in this season. He's actually had 3+ passing touchdowns in 1 out of 3 games this season, too. So this would be the first game, where if he doesn't get 2+ passing touchdowns, this would be the first game where he doesn't get that, if he doesn't go over the 1.5 touchdown passes total. Now, Carolina's done a good job this season at limiting passing touchdowns by quarterbacks. And the fact that San Francisco is projected to be up in this game, I mean, it's a tough game to kind of like to dissect a little bit here. You could go with the game script where Purdy is playing maybe from behind and throwing passing touchdowns, or gets up that way. I mean, what do you think about it, JB? I'm unsure. I'm unsure about that. I don't have a lot of information to work with. He's never played a career game against Carolina, but he has had 2+ passing touchdowns in all 3 games this season. Carolina's been okay at defending against passing touchdowns by quarterbacks. If San Francisco's up in this game, I mean, I think it's tough for me to say that they're going to just throw a bunch of passing touchdowns if they get up. If they're up 14-0 at halftime, 17-0 at halftime. I don't know, man. I'm just unsure about that. I don't have enough information to really work with it, to be honest with you. But that's the information that I do have, is that he's had 2+ passing touchdowns in all 3 games this season. I just want to say, Bettors, yesterday, NFL early games wasn't so nice to me. My day was bad. I was defeated by the books till your Cowboys rallied back, man. Yeah, let's go, man. We got the Cowboys and Chiefs on Thanksgiving. I cannot wait for that game. JB, I'm not talking to you until that game's over after this show.
I don't know.
Just hey, we'll do a breakdown on the Chiefs and Cowboys game, but
Yeah,
who do you think is going to
absolutely.
win, JB?
Man, I think it's very it could, like you said, I think it could be, their Super Bowl, but here's the deal. Um man, it's hard for me to say that the Chiefs are not gonna try to go on some type of tear, lock in. They got, build momentum. I said it very early on in the season, beginning of the season. I rather my team get hot when it's cold, not see cold when it's hot.
Yeah, but I think Jerry World may be air conditioned. So no, I'm kidding, bro. Um, Man, I got this feeling that the Cowboys are going to be doing really good and just break my heart right at dinner time. You know what I mean? But at least I'll have some food to swallow that Cowboys loss down with. But let's stick with the matter at hand here. Let's keep on here with the Bryce Young touchdown passes. He's thrown 1+ touchdown pass in 7 out of 10 games this season. He's thrown 2+ touchdown passes in 4 out of 10 games. 3+ touchdown passes in 3 out of 10 games this season. I don't know if I touched on McCaffrey's receptions, but he's gone over the 5.5 receptions in 8 out of 11 games this season. But he's had 5+ receptions in 10 out of 11 games this season. So I think 5+ receptions paired with 40+ receiving yards is solid for McCaffrey. But what I think is even a little bit more solid is the 3+ receptions with 40+ receiving yards for McCaffrey. He's gone over those lines in all games this season. In all games that he's played in. He's had at least 3 receptions in every game this season, and he's had at least 40 yards receiving in every game this season. Um, Dowdle. Did we talk about his receiving line and reception at all? I think we did. Jawan Jennings. Oh, I do have a note here. San Francisco, before the week started, allowed the ninth most receiving yards to running backs and the second most receptions. If you guys do have Chuba Hubbard receiving yards props, he does have more yards per catch on grass than turf in all 5 career seasons that he's played in. So I think that's a benefit if you're thinking about Hubbard receiving yards tonight. Jawan Jennings over under 46.5 receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 3 out of 9 games this season. He's gone over that line in 2 straight games. He's had 40 plus receiving yards in 5 out of 9 games this season. He's had 30 plus receiving yards in 6 out of 9 games this season. He's gone over the 46.5 receiving line in only 1 out of 3 games that Brock Purdy has played in this season. Jawan Jennings had 16, 24, and 54 receiving yards in the 3 games that Brock Purdy played in this season. Jawan Jennings had 45 receiving yards in his only career game against Carolina and did not score a touchdown. He's had many more yards per catch in 4 out of 5 seasons when his team wins or ties rather than loses. He has more yards per catch on turf than grass in 4 out of 5 seasons, which is a bad trend. I'm seeing some bad trends here for Jawan Jennings, man. And I would absolutely have to take his line down to at least 45 plus instead
Yeah.
of the 46.5. I mean, just a hook, a yard and a half, a yard can make the world of difference. We saw that yesterday with one of the Bears receivers. I think it was Odunze, right? He had over under 53.5, and he landed right on 53. So sometimes you might not think it matters, and then you look at your ticket and you're like, oh man, it's a half a yard or whatever. And I think that could be the case here today with Jawan Jennings. Ricky Pearsall, over under 41.5 receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 4 out of 5 games this season. Much better than Jawan Jennings going over his line out of 3 out of 9 games this season. Pearsall has actually had 45 plus receiving yards in 4 out of 5 games this season. He's had 55 plus receiving yards in 3 out of 5 games this season. He's had 100 plus receiving yards in 2 out of 5 games this season. He also has gone over his 41.5 receiving yard line in 2 out of the 3 games that Brock Purdy played this season. He had 108 receiving yards, 46, and then 0 receiving yards. He's never played against Carolina. When I was looking at Ricky Pearsall's grass versus turf splits, road versus home splits, I saw some inconsistencies there. So there was nothing too telling with that. He's just kind of up and down, whatever. But Pearsall has had 1 plus reception in all 5 games this season. He's had 3 plus receptions in 4 out of 5 games this season. He's actually had 4 plus receptions in 4 out of 5 games this season. And then with Brock Purdy, he had 4 receptions, and 1 reception. So I'm thinking Pearsall out of those 2 guys is the way I'd be leaning towards. Now, Jawan Jennings has gone over his 3.5 receptions in 6 out of 9 games this season, and he's gone over that in 5 straight games. So that's respectable. He's had 2 plus receptions in 8 out of 9 games this season. But Jawan Jennings has only gone over his 3.5 reception line in 1 out of 3 games that he's played with Brock Purdy this season. And he only had 2 receptions in his only career game against Carolina. So I'm thinking Ricky Pearsall is statistically looking better tonight for the receiving yards and receptions, but let's not forget about George Kittle here. Carolina has allowed the 4th most receiving yards to tight ends this season. Kittle over under 57.5 receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 2 out of 6 games this season. He has gone over that in 2 straight games. He's had 40 plus receiving yards in 3 out of 6 games this season. He's had 30 plus receiving yards in 4 out of 6 games this season. I mean, you would have to take his line way down to get a good success rate. I mean, 25 plus receiving yards for Kittle, 5 out of 6 games this season. He's gone over the 57.5 true line in 1 out of 2 games this season that he's played with Brock Purdy. He had 25 and 67 receiving yards. He's gone over this line in only 1 out of 3 career games against Carolina and did not score a touchdown in either of those games. In those 3 career games against Carolina, he had 27, 47, and 86 receiving yards. He as well had inconsistent splits with the grass versus turf, home and away and stuff. And then the receptions for him, I would feel more comfortable taking that from 4.5 to down to 3.5. He's only gone over the 4.5 in 2 out of 6 games this season. And then 1 out of 2 games that he's played with Brock Purdy, he's gone over that line. But I would lean more towards Kittle going over the true reception line than the receiving line tonight. But 4+ I think is a little bit more comfortable. He's gone over that in 5 out of 6 games this season. But in his 3 games against Carolina, George Kittle has had 5 receptions and 6 receptions. So he's had at least 5 receptions in all 3 career games against Carolina. But the fact that he only has it in 2 out of 6 games this season makes me feel a little bit more comfortable taking that line down to 4+ receptions for Kittle. Carolina, before the week started, also was not specifically great or terrible at defending against that tight end position in regards to receptions allowed. But receiving yards allowed, they were 4th worst. But I would rather attack Carolina's receptions in this game with George Kittle. Maybe I don't know if Tonjes is going to get any run or anything like that. Maybe his receiving yards is something to consider. I didn't see a line for Tonjes when I was looking this morning, but yeah, I think that's the way I'd go with Kittle. Still, my favorite pass catcher is going to be, for San Francisco is going to be Ricky Pearsall and Christian McCaffrey. I've already gone over everybody's pretty much receiving props for the most part for San Francisco. One other guy I want to touch on here is the receiving props for Sanders, the tight end for Carolina. San Francisco, before the week started, allowed the 10th most receiving yards to tight ends and the 4th most receptions. Sanders has gone over the 17.5 receiving line in 5 out of 8 games this season. He's gone over that in 2 straight games. He's had 10+ receiving yards in 6 out of 8 games this season. So, yeah, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with Sanders at that 10+ receiving yard line. But still, 5 out of 8 games this season, going over the 17.5 isn't bad. And then I didn't see him have any career history against San Francisco. And I saw some inconsistencies with his grass versus turf splits, home versus road splits. And then his reception line, 2.5. He's gone over that 2.5 reception line in half of his games this season. He's gone over that in 2 straight games. He's had 2+ receptions in 6 out of 8 games this season. He's had 1+ reception in 7 out of 8 games this season. Really, I mean, he's had 4+ receptions in 3 out of 8 games this season. If for some reason you want to do Sanders with the alt reception line for some reason, he's had 4+ receptions in 3 out of 8 games this season. Did we talk about Brock Purdy rushing yards at all? I don't think we did. Sorry, JB, I'm just kind of rambling right now, but I want to get these statistics out there a little bit. And I know we've already talked about your favorite pass catchers here for San Francisco. Brock Purdy rushing yards. Now, Carolina has allowed the 4th fewest rushing yards in football before the week started. Brock Purdy over under 9.5 rushing yards. He has gone over that line in 2 out of 3 games this season. He's actually had 13+ rushing yards in 2 out of 3 games this season. And although he's technically played a game against Carolina, he really hasn't. He had 1 rushing attempt for a negative rushing yard in his only career game. But here's the thing about Purdy. He has more rushing yards per carry at home than on the road in all career seasons that he's had. So that's a good trend for him. He's also had more yards per carry in games that his team loses than when his team wins or ties. So if you think Carolina gets the win tonight, Brock Purdy, once again, he has more yards per carry in games that he loses than wins or ties in all 4 career seasons that he's had. And then also he has more rushing yards per carry on grass than turf in every season that he's played in except this season, which is a good trend for him because this game's being played on grass. So even if San Francisco wins this game, I think there is a possibility that Brock Purdy goes over these rushing yards. But he's going up against, once again, Carolina, ranked fourth best in the NFL in preventing rushing yards before the week started to quarterbacks. I would feel more comfortable with this if San Francisco loses the game. What do you think, JB? Do you have any thoughts about whether or not Brock Purdy has 10 plus rushing yards?
Oh, Brock Purdy probably has 10 plus rushing yards. I see him. If they make him uncomfortable or whatever, I mean, he's kind of man. I don't know. He is coming back from an injury, so probably not. Probably on the safe side, he doesn't. Um, but I don't know. He is that kind of quarterback though that's not afraid to take off and run. Uh, I'm gonna say no on the safe side. I'm saying no.
Now, Carolina, we've talked about Christian McCaffrey's receiving props. Here we are with the rushing props. Carolina has allowed the seventh most rushing yards to running backs before the week started. Christian McCaffrey, over under 72 and a half rushing yards. He's only gone over that line in 3 out of 11 games this season. He's had 60 plus rushing yards in 4 out of 11 games this season. He's had 55 plus rushing yards in 6 out of 11 games this season. He's had 50 plus rushing yards in 8 out of 11 games this season. He's only gone over the 72 and a half rushing line in 1 out of 3 games this season that Brock Purdy has played in. He had 49, 69, and 81 rushing yards. He's never played against Carolina. His splits were inconsistent. JB, you're feeling like McCaffrey goes under those rushing yards tonight? 72 and a half. You think he gets less than that or
You said
over?
what?
McCaffrey, 72 and a half rushing yards,
I
over or
think he gets about.
under?
I think he gets that. I think he gets that.
You do? I don't.
Yeah, I think he gets that. I just don't think he gets over that. I don't think he like. I think that's just like an average McCaffrey. You know, 70, like 70, 72 rushing yards, something
I
like
would
that.
feel more. I would feel more comfortable with McCaffrey at 50 plus rushing yards, but I wouldn't even feel necessarily comfortable with that. Um, because he's only still gone over that in 8 out of 11 games this season, which is okay. But usually, when you take these alternate lines down, sometimes you're getting a 90% success rate, 100% success rate. You're still looking at 8 out of 11 games this season. So I'm going to go with, McCaffrey, just more so that pass catching back tonight. And then Brian Robinson Jr. I think this is probably my favorite player to go over his rushing yards for the 49ers. Over under 23 and a half. He's gone over that line in 5 out of 11 games this season. I wrote something crazy in my notes here. He didn't have a target or a carry in one game. He also didn't have a carry in another game. So it sounds like he's really gone over that line in 5 out of 9 games this season. And then he's had at least 5 carries in 3 straight games. And he's also gone over the 23 and a half rushing yards in 3 straight games. He's had 20 plus rushing yards in 8 out of 11 games this season. But it's more like 8 out of 9 games because he didn't have a carry in 2 games. And he had 71 rushing yards and a touchdown in his only career game against Carolina. He has also more yards per carry at home than on the road in all 4 career seasons that he's played in. So this is going to be my favorite guy to go over his rushing line tonight, Brian Robinson Jr., over 23 and a half rushing yards. I think he's a good sleeper for a touchdown. Anytime touchdown scorer. He does have a career touchdown against Carolina. He's gone over that rushing yard way over in his only career game against Carolina. Now, his role was probably a little bit different back then, but I do like adding that. I think it's a good complementary statistic going with, his current in-season data too. So there is that. And, from my understanding, JB, Sky Moore is the punt returner and kick returner for San Francisco.
Yeah,
What do you think about him, man? Do you think
trash.
trash?
Yeah, he spent 4 years with Kansas City and Mahomes, and he only caught 2 passing touchdowns.
Thank you for the Sanders stat. That was interesting.
Yeah, I'm not for it. I don't like it.
Yeah, JB said trash. um, but did I give out a my favorite San Francisco? So yeah, it'd be McMillan for Carolina, San Francisco. I'm thinking Brian Robinson Jr. for an anytime touchdown. What about wide receiver touchdowns allowed by Carolina? They've done pretty good at limiting those out this season. Um, I mean, the the standard play is McCaffrey, McMillan. The
Yeah.
McDouble, McMillan, McCaffrey.
Oh, to make tempo.
Yeah, Robinson would be the
Supersize me.
sneakier play here.
Add
But
Robinson
give
with the
me a
supersize.
McDouble. Give me a McDouble on this one. The McCaffrey and McMillan. But yeah, Brian Robinson, man, I think that's a good consideration here on a primetime game. We've talked about him a little bit earlier in the show. Any other thoughts on this game, JB? I think that about does it for me.
No, no, nope. I
Coker,
don't have
I don't know if
nothing.
I don't know if I mentioned anything about Coker, Jalen Coker, but he's had let's see, he's gone over his receiving line in 2 out of 5 games this season, 30 plus receiving yards in 2 out of 5 games this season, 20 plus receiving yards in 3 out of 5 games this season, 9 plus receiving yards in 4 out of 5 games this season, and then his reception line 2.5. He's gone over that in 3 out of 5 games this season, 3 plus receptions in 3 out of 5 games this season, which is the same as over 2.5. And then 1 plus reception in 4 out of 5 games this season. Um, and yeah, that's about all I got, man. So, any last words? What's your final score prediction, JB?
Um, 26. Oh, no, 24-27 Carolina.
What'd you say? 27-24 Carolina.
Yeah.
Um, mine's gonna be 24-20 San Francisco. 24-20. But yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for joining today. We should be doing a show. I should be doing my next show on Thursday morning. My schedule could change. I may do a show Wednesday instead. Uh, but right now I'm planning on Thursday morning. And then just definitely want to let's see what's the latest on Mayfield injury. Is he out for the year? I have a futures bet with the Panthers winning the NFC South, says Ivan. Hey, what's going on, Carlos? A field goal win. Um, let me try to find something real quick. Ivan, injury update for Baker. Have you heard anything on that, JB?
On
Huh?
on who?
Baker Mayfield. Our Blessed Up P's asking about. I mean, he's going to have an MRI today. It looks like. So it looks like we're going to know a little bit more today. Our Blessed Up P.
I know this. It does not look good. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it doesn't look good from what I'm just seeing here, but we should have some more clarification on that maybe later on today. But
Because if you don't remember, uh, that's the reason why that shoulder is the reason why he was removed from his duties in Cleveland and shipped off. and released. But it's because they didn't know what was up with his shoulder. He had such bad problems with his shoulder. Needed surgery. It was not throwing blood as well. So we'll see. I mean, it obviously caused him enough pain for them to take him out.
Any other words here, JB? I just want to say thank you once again to our supporters, followers, and subscribers. We really appreciate you guys. Good luck today. And a special thank you to our sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and W Energy Drinks. So, yep. Take care, guys. I'll see you guys either Wednesday or Thursday, but I'm planning on Thursday. If it changes, I'll let you guys know. But
Thursday is Thanksgiving.
yep, go
Okay,
Cowboys.
just FYI. Yep. Turduckins.
All right, later. Take care, everybody. Good luck.
They not move.
This non-casual podcast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or reused without the authorized written consent of the Not Move Podcast Network. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.